Ethics can be defined as a framework of rules regarding moral principles that tell us how a person should act. Law is a specific system of punishable rules and guidelines that, instead of being decided personally as with ethics, are mandated and enforced by social institutions to govern our human behavior. Ethics and legality as they pertain to media, particularly media entertainment, have its interwoven dilemmas. While there are many to study and examine, the three most obvious are the depiction of sex and violence, advertisement, and the heavy-handed use of stereotypes. It is widely known and agreed upon and understood that media defines culture, and that culture defines media. Therefore, we should strive to set our personal and professional boundaries higher than normal for the sole purpose of interference and subconscious participation in such dilemmas. To counter some of these latent dilemmas, in 1947 the Hutchins Commission created a universal code of media ethics. The Media Code of Ethics is comprised of 4 basic principles, each having specific behavioral directions. The first principle, report the truth. This means that journalists should strive to be courageous, honest, and supremely fair when gathering news, reporting it, and most importantly, when interpreting it. The next, minimize harm, means that journalists need to treat their sources, subjects, and co-workers with the compassion of human beings that are worthy of respect. The third, act independently, and that means that journalists shouldn't write or report for any reason other than the public's inherent right to know. Lastly, be accountable means exactly what it says, be accountable to each other and to the readers and viewers, perhaps even listeners. The presence of sex, violence, and strong language in the media seem to ignore or disregard entirely some of these offerings. To counter some of this behavior and regulate its presence, ethical guidelines or legislation can be found in abundance. To enforce these guidelines, we elect special enforcement agencies, count on management and oversight bodies, determine regulatory agencies, trust investigative agencies to be thorough in findings, prosecutors to be vigilant, and courts to be lawful. In addition to being held accountable by the legislation mentioned previously, entertainment media is subject to a rating system dependent on their platform. For instance, television, as we know it, is held accountable by the FCC. This is a government agency that acts independently to monitor and regulate all communication dealing with television, including media responsibility. Film, on the other hand, is subject to a rating system designed and sanctioned by the Motion Picture Association of America film rating system. It is based on the content for protection and safety of the American people. Video games are also subject to scrutinous rating systems for mass public release. The self-regulatory agency ESRB deals with video game ratings in place to determine acceptability and suitability for content. The Internet Content Rating Association regulates things like sex, violence, strong language, and other undesirable material on the World Wide Web. Like the institution above, the ICRA created a system of content descriptors to help people decide what they should view or allow others to view, such as their loved ones or children. Other ethical dilemmas can be found in media advertising, especially how it pertains to advertising in media. Because of this, the IAE, Institute for Advertising Ethics, founded 8 principles of advertising, which mandates the industry to make all communication appropriate and ethical for the public and consumers alike. The 8 principles are: industry should maintain standards and tell the truth, use high personal ethics when creating and disseminating information, clearly distinguish the difference between editorial and paid ads, make it known in all ads whether compensation was received or not, make sure to use discretion and care when dealing with different audiences, especially those that are easily influenced, be straightforward and safeguard the customer, comply with all local, federal, state, and industry law, and lastly, number 8, have private discussions about ethical concerns and be able to freely express ideas. The last interwoven ethical dilemma is the use of stereotypes in entertainment media, and this one is perhaps the most important. This is great cause for concern when considering that stereotypes directly have the power to affect someone's perception of themselves, and as psychology asserts, perception is reality. So advertising has the ability to affect someone's perception of their own reality, which can affect us culturally. The two types of stereotypes are explicit and implicit. Explicit are stereotypes that are able to be verbalized to other people. The implicit stereotype is not accessible to the conscious, and the subject may be entirely unaware that they even possess this. Stereotypes, it is important to note that stereotypes do not reflect reality. Stereotypes are used for cognitive and social functions, and it has been suggested that the two are intertwined. Stereotypes do help us make sense of the world, although they are very dangerous. The effects of stereotypes are attributional ambiguity, stereotype threat, self-fulfilling prophecy, discrimination, self-stereotype, and a substitute for observation, all of which have their own pool of social and personal implications. The substitution for observation is perhaps the most dangerous, since it could lead to a misinterpretation of cultural identity. The ramifications of that on a global scale are impossible to understand. So as we can see, there are all kinds of ethical dilemmas interwoven into entertainment media. Some of the most obvious and important ones are, again, the depiction of sex and violence, the presence of strong language, advertisement issues, and the dangerous use of stereotypes. It is our responsibility, both personally and as members of society, to educate ourselves on these things so that we can do our best to practice ethically and present ourselves professionally in everything we do as our one single solitary defense against involuntary participation in the problem as a whole. If your entertainment choices are wasting your gifts and skills, subverting your sense of human empathy, and weakening your trust and truthfulness, we all lose something very precious. Thank you.